all to our welcome you all to our weekly session of gynecological malignancy. Today is our tumor board and our faculties. The beginning, I request our president of the oncology club. Our presenting institute today is National Institute of the Cancer Research and Hospital. And I request at first our president of the oncology club, Professor Dr. E.M.A. Heiser, who is the chairperson of the sessions. I request her to give us permission to start the session. Sir, please.
Thank you, Dr. Sana. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good evening to everyone, particularly faculties from abroad and participants from home and abroad. We're already late by 15 minutes. So, I think we'll start immediately. Sana, please start immediately without any delay. Over to you.
Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum. Introduction to the virtual academic program of gynecological malignancy. Me, Dr. Shahana Parveen from National Institute of Cancer Research and Hospital. Our faculties are presenting institute today is National Institute of Cancer Research and Hospital. And today's our local faculties are Dr. Shushmita Sarkar, Dr. Shushmita Bordon, Dr. Farhana Kalam, and Dr. Begum Saira Sultana. All are the resident in Gynae Oncology Department in National Institute of Cancer Research and Hospital. Our overseas faculties today are Professor Dr. Amita Maheshwari. Dr. Amita Maheshwari, ma'am, she is the head and Professor, Department of Gynae Oncology, Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai. Dr. Sushil Kumar Giri, sir is the Honorary Professor, Postgraduate Institute of Gynecologic Oncology, Astaria Horihar, Postgraduate Institute, Chutak, India. Dr. Seema Gulia. Dr. Seema Gulia is Professor, Medical Oncology, Tata Memorial Hospital, Mumbai. And another faculty is Dr. Bhavana Rai. She is Professor, Department of Radiotherapy, Postgraduate Institute of Postgraduate Institute. I can, Dr. Bhavana, please. Medical Education and Research in Chandigarh, India. And we have today our Scientific Secretary of Oncology Club, Dr. A.F.M. Kamaluddin, is the Scientific Secretary. And also our patron, Professor Dr. E.M.A. Heiser, is the President of the Oncology Club. Before starting, I would like to request the organizing committee, Mr. Mahfuz, to show the poll questions. Before starting the original session, we will start with the poll questions. Mahfuz, please show the poll questions, please. Each question 30 seconds, and all the participants are requested for poll voting.
I'm done.
Okay, thank you very much. We are very much sorry that today is the another program which is overlapping this program, that is SAPO program in elimination of the cervical cancer. Even after that, as it's the routine program to make the continuity of this program, we are doing this program. Our first presenter today is Dr. Shushmita Bordon. Dr. Shushmita Bordon is Resident Gynae Oncology Department, National Institute of Cancer Research and Hospital. Shushmita, please present your case.
Assalamu alaikum. Am I audible, madam?
Yes, yes.
Honorable Chairperson, respected foreign faculties and learned audience. Very good evening. She was a 60 years multiparous hypertensive diabetic lady who attended to a gynae oncologist on 5th March in this year with the complaint of postmenopausal bleeding for 1 month. On examination, her ECOG score was 0. She was mildly anemic, non-icteric, no accessible lymphadenopathy. And parvaginal examination revealed a large fungating saprophytic growth occupying whole of the cervix, which extends to upper 1/3 of the vagina and which was friable, bleeds on touch. Bimanual examination revealed cervix and upper 1/3 vagina replaced by a friable growth. All fornixes were involved. And on rectovaginal examination, both parametrium were found free and rectal mucosa was also free. Her biopsy report from the cervical tissue was adenocarcinoma poorly differentiated. So the diagnosis was carcinoma cervix stage 2A. Her ultrasonogram report was fatty liver grade 1 and suggestive of uterine fibroid. But the pelvic MRI revealed there is a there was a hyperintense soft tissue mass about 3.4 into 3.3 and 2 centimeter, which extends to the upper 2/3 of the vagina. But there was no parametrial invasion and no lymphadenopathy. Her all other investigations revealed normal. So for this 60 years diabetic hypertensive lady with bulky stage 2 tumor, which extends upper 2/3 of the vagina, and what treatment is more preferable for her? Whether we should go for surgery or for chemoradiation.
What was the report? Adenocarcinoma.
Yes, adenocarcinoma poorly differentiated, and it is the tumor was bulky and it extends to upper 2/3 of the vagina.
Bhavana, please.
Hello, good evening.
Yes,
So we would like to treat her with concurrent chemoradiation. Because of the bulky tumor extending into the upper 2/3 of vagina, I think concurrent chemoradiation would be the treatment of choice.
Yes, madam.
Is there anybody who is in favor of surgery in these patients? Any of our faculty? Giri sir, Amita ma'am.
I like to know what is the size of the lesion. As per MRI, it is around 3 to 3.5 centimeter.
3.5.
Sir, size, I think it was more than 4 centimeter because MRI was done after biopsy, but biopsy, there was tissue about 4 into 3 into 2 centimeter.
And how could you measure that?
Upper 2/3, 1/3 of the vagina was involved with the group.
And how could you measure this size by clinical examinations?
By clinical, yeah, only this assumption.
So it is assumptions, and it can be confirmed by the MRI. MRI shows it is around 3.5 centimeter. Is it not it?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Around 3.3 centimeter.
Yes.
So it is 1B, one lesion.
Oh, it is upper to half vagina involved, sir.
Vagina involved is all right, but again you have to look into it because it is a adenocarcinoma. It's an adenocarcinoma, and a parameter is C. So looking into her structures and what is the BMI?
Yes, sir.
BMI. What is the BMI?
BMI.
Sir, normal, sir.
Anyhow, most probably it's a very borderline case. Whether to go for surgery or go for chemoradiation is a borderline case, and perhaps we can think of going for a radical hysterectomy. Looking into, because vagina is involved, we can go for both abdominal and vaginal approach can be done, and this will be a good approach because it is a adenocarcinoma, and Dr. Bhavana can say yes, most probably people are thinking that it may be radiation resistant, something like that. So anyhow, Dr. Amita can give expert opinion also.
Yeah, hi, very good afternoon. So before that, I want to make two comments here. One is, for vaginal involvement, I think while doing MRI, we should use jelly. So we must tell our radiologists to put jelly in vagina because this problem we also face very often. Clinically, we will feel vagina is free, but MRI will show vaginal involvement, and that's because large size it touches vaginal margin and they can't differentiate vaginal involvement versus just tumor stretching the vagina. So when we are doing for cervix, we should tell radiologists to put jelly in the vagina. That gives a good plane between tumor and vagina, and it can differentiate whether there is true vaginal involvement or it's a false appearance. The second thing, if we see the most recent WHO classification, it is important to differentiate these adenocarcinomas, whether they are HPV associated or independent. And the simplest way to do is P16 IHC. So when we have adenocarcinoma on cervical biopsy, I think we should request pathologists to do P16 IHC. Because I think treatment and outcome of these tumors is very different. So I feel like, if it's P16 positive adenocarcinoma with upper 1/3 of vaginal involvement, I will go with concurrent chemo radiation. If there is any doubt, we can do a colposcopic examination and to know the exact extent of vaginal involvement. But if clinically upper 1/3 is involved, and getting another 2-3 centimeter margin beyond that will be technically very difficult. So our preferred modality here would be what Bhavna said, concurrent chemo radiation. If there is some disease remaining at the end of definitive concurrent chemo radiation, we may consider salvage hysterectomy, but that I think that's what we would do at our center.
Ma'am, can I make a please?
Yes, before that, I have a comment. This, it is clinically also upper 1/3 of the vagina is involved. Not only
No, but on MRI, it is upper 2/3.
yes, but clinically it was suspected upper 1/3 or yes, upper 2/3. Yes.
Yeah, upper 2/3. So generally on MRI, vaginal involvement is more than what we see clinically. And this is something we often face in our practice also. And I think that if there is any further doubt, we can plan a colposcopy in this case. If we are still contemplating between surgery versus radiation, then I think we can we can do colposcopy to know the exact extent of vaginal involvement.
Kamal wanted to say something. Professor Kamal.
Yes, Dr. Bhavna also. Kamal bhai.
So I have a question to Amita, that there
Yes.
was a biopsy taken at the beginning. Say, for example, the biopsy that biopsy specimen was 2 by 2 centimeter. And then after the biopsy, the MRI is telling the lesion is 3 centimeters. So shall I take it 5 or I take it 3? I mean, that was the discussion going on. What is your comment on that? Dr. Giri was making a comment. I want to have a comment on you for this.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to know, but according to me, it should be the first assessment size. But if you see FIGO staging now, FIGO says it, in fact, if you do surgery in this case, So Figo would say between clinical MRI and surgery, you take surgical specimen side. And but we know, like, by the time specimen is out and sent for pathology, part of tumor may be already biopsied or some, dropped or some shrinkage. But so the recommendation is histological specimen or MRI. But personally, I would say at first assessment what we see, because if we have removed 2-3 centimeter tumor in biopsy, part of tumor is already, gone.
Dr. Bhavana has raised hand. Dr. Bhavana, please.
Yes, I would just like to add on to what Dr. Amita has already said. I think the take-home message for the residents is that a clinical pelvic examination is very important, and we should not only guide our treatment on MRI findings. So especially in cases of vaginal involvement, I think our clinical examination is a better way of assessing the vaginal involvement rather than MR.
Right. And the other thing is for adenocarcinoma of cervix, especially, one should try to get immunohistochemistry, because nowadays, adenocarcinoma has become very heterogeneous group. And
Yes.
if possible, at least P16, one should try to do.
Regarding size of the tumor by clinical examination is a little misnomer. So somebody will say 3 centimeters, somebody will 4 centimeters. So it becomes difficult. So size is
No,
confirmed
so
by
I think Dr.
size is
Giri,
confirmed by imaging. It is
right.
confirmed
So
by
what
imaging.
Dr. Kamal was asking,
Yeah,
suppose
just-
you see patient, you saw tumor was 5 centimeter and 3 centimeter you remove while doing the biopsy.
So usually you take a punch biopsy. It does not take
No,
2
but
centimeters. Usually,
no, but
just for argument's sake, you can say like this. But usually you take a small punch biopsy. It is
Right.
hardly 0.5 centimeter less than that.
No, but here I think the biopsy says tumor bit what was received at pathology lab was 2-3 centimeter, quite a bit, the long, big one.
It bleeds a lot. If you take a big chance.
Yeah, Dr. Amita, in this case, apparently the cervix was totally healthy, and our colleagues, she just took a biopsy. It was not a punch biopsy. She took a part of it. So she took quite a generous amount of tissue.
Right.
And thereafter, as she on earth, she never thought it was a big cervix. So she took a biopsy, not assuming anything. But once they came out malignancy, then MRI was done and all these things happened,
Right. So if we can go to previous slide, to histopathology slide, we can see the gross, what was the size of tissue
Sushmita.
removed.
Sushmita, previous slide to देखो.
So
Yes,
it says
yes.
4
So-
into 3 into 2 centimeter, Dr. Giri. So quite a lot.
So taken most probably she taken a bone biopsy or something. Which biopsy taken might have taken.
No. It's a visible growth. Okay.
So
Next,
most probably the
proceed.
lesion was one endocervical, because the cervix was healthy. As Dr. told, the cervix is healthy, and it must be endocervical lesion. All probabilities. The
I
extracervical
think
is healthy.
it must be uniformly bulky looking cervix, which we see many times. So someone must have thought ectropion or some such, diagnosis. So anyway, let's move on to the next one.
To the next, proceed.
So, madam,
Yes, proceed. Next.
the patient placed to the tumor board, and according to the tumor board decision, she received EBRT 50 gray 25 fraction with concurrent cisplatin from 24th March 21, followed by brachytherapy 7 gray per day, 3 insertion 21 gray up to 10th May. After completion of her concurrent chemoradiation, during her first follow-up visit, her only complaint was anorexia. On examination, she was mildly anemic, non-ecteric, no lymphadenopathy, and no palpable mass or organomegaly are found in per abdominal examination. And pelvic examination revealed cervix flushed with vagina, uterus normal size, all fornixes free, and both parametrium free. But on ultrasonogram of whole abdomen report, there are multiple liver metastases found. And next, MRI of the whole abdomen revealed hepatomegaly with multiple metastases in all segments of the liver, and but there is no local disease. This is the picture. So what will be the next treatment plan for this unfortunate patient?
Is it usual?
Very unusual, but as I said, there is some merit in looking whether these are HPV independent tumor, because these tumors have very aggressive course. We have seen like gastric cell carcinoma or clear cell type adenocarcinoma or mesonephric. They have very aggressive course. So the way her liver is, and within a month time, I mean, it's really surprising. And we got the confirmation of diagnosis of, I mean, it's likely to be the same primary lesion from the cervix only.
Yeah.
The patient is advised for core cut biopsy from liver lesion and liver function test, but reports are pending now.
So essentially, if it confirms, I don't know if Seema could join or not, but she will be for chemotherapy plus minus bevacizumab can be considered. The other thing is, if possible, we can do immuno, PDL IHC, and if positive, if patient can afford immunotherapy, also can be. I mean, that's can be one of the treatment. But to start with, it will be paclitaxel and carboplatin, provided her liver function is normal. This looks very bad liver.
Did we have a baseline ultrasound in this patient of the abdomen?
Yes.
Yes.
Baseline ultrasound. Yes.
Madam, this is the liver, and they showed that the echogenicity is homogeneous.
Okay.
Not only that, let me introduce, let me interact. I'm Dr. Mustafa Shumon, the treating unfortunate consultant of this poor patient. Hello, Shana Appa?
Yes.
Am I allowed to?
Yes.
So not only the ultrasonogram, on the routine screening, we have done all the CT scan, and I have already sent you all the CT scan images, and it shows that there is no lesion in the liver.
Okay.
There was a CT scan also.
Because given the poorly differentiated
Yes.
that could explain the aggressive nature. And like Dr. Amita said, we could be dealing with a non-HPV even of an adenocarcinoma. Perhaps that is the reason it is behaving like this.
But I just want to ask the question that is there anything that we have done anything wrong that could
I mean, to me, treatment was done perfectly all right. Concurrent chemoradiation, that's what we also would have done at our center. And this is like in a month's time, she got this sort of recurrence, or in 6 weeks' time. So that's essentially biologically aggressive tumor. And
not only that, she took her treatment within 7 weeks, completed her treatment. That is the usual time.
yeah, no, so treatment wise, it was absolutely all right. And she doesn't have local disease. So it's like, hematogenous spread has happened, which has caused liver to, I would suspect it to be an HPV independent adenocarcinoma, gastric cancer, or some aggressive variant. And so now she will be essentially for palliative treatment, palliative chemotherapy.
Bhavna, any?
No, Dr. Shana, she will be for, like ma'am said, for palliative chemotherapy with paclitaxel and bevacizumab if possible.
And palliative care, I think so, because she's already anorexic, symptomatic for her liver disease, but maybe a good idea to get a core biopsy review or report review. She also would require palliation of symptoms because
Yes.
and some nutritional support, then end of life care should be initiated at this point.
With dialysis.
Okay, Sushmita.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Patient here.
Yes, Sushmita. Now our second presenter is Dr. Farhana Kalam. She is resident in Gynecology Department, National Institute of Cancer Research and Hospital.
Thank you, madam.
Okay, share your screen.
Yes, ma'am. Madam, I think there is a problem from sharing from me. Can you please share?
I mean, share it from center. Share slides from center. Okay.
Obi, please. Obi.
Madam, here is problem to share my screen.
Yeah, okay. Just a minute.
Airport चले जाओ. Let's go to next one.
স্যার ডক্টর ভাবনা তারা অন্য একটা কাজ আছে চলে যাবে আমি শেয়ার করছি স্যার জাস্ট এ মিনিট
Dr. Shahana, I'm here.
Yes, you have another program.
Yes.
Yes. Obi, please start.
Yes. Honorable Chairperson, respected distinguished faculties from home and abroad, and learned audience, Assalamu alaikum and good evening. Mrs. X, 70 years old lady, para 3, living 3, got admitted herself in Medical College Hospital with the complaints of pain and heaviness in lower abdomen for 15 days. Ultrasonography was done and image showed enlarged uterus 11 into 5 into 3 centimeter, which contains thick collection having fine and coarse echogenic debris, probably hematometra or pyometra. She underwent total abdominal hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy in September 2019. In this type of scenario, when the patient came to us with abdominal pain and hematometra or pyometra, should we go for hysterectomy or we need to evaluate this patient before doing hysterectomy?
In a menopausal lady,
Yes, sir.
with a pain abdomen,
Yes, sir.
with the endometrial finding of any fluid or something like that. So
Yes.
before going for, at least you should evaluate it. If it is a pyometra or hematometra, try to drain it. Then after some days, sometimes we can go for another TT scan and see the endometrial conditions, and you can take the biopsy accordingly. Without going for the endometrial evaluations, do not jump into go for hysterectomy at all.
Histopathology of uterus and ovaries were done. Section of endometrium showed endometrium carcinoma of squamous cell variant. Cervix shows chronic cervicitis with squamous metaplasia. Both sides ovaries show mostly follicular cyst and small serous cyst adenoma. And with this report, she was referred to National Institute of Cancer Research and Hospital for further management. We examined her. Her ECOG performance status was 0. She is mildly anemic. Her cardiorespiratory system reveals no abnormality. Abdominal examination reveals mild tenderness present in right hypochondriac region. Pelvic examination, no abnormality was detected. How should we proceed with this patient now?
Bhavna, please.
Do we have a detail of the histopathology regarding the depth of myometrial invasion?
No, just I'm
Madam?
showing. Yes.
Because I couldn't quote very clearly. It says,
Madam, it says gross specimen, which is 3 into 2 into, measuring of the uterus is not shown here, and the ovary is measured 3 into 2 centimeter, and 7 blocks are embedded, 2 from cervix and 1 from polypoid mass, and 2 from ovaries. And their comment is endometrial carcinoma squamous cell variant.
okay. So we do not have any information about the myometrium.
No, madam, here is not noted.
So this is a grossly inadequate pathology report. So I would want to submit these blocks again to a higher center for them to tell us the detailed pathology before deciding the further plan of treatment in this patient.
Is there anybody who would like to add anything?
Yeah, I think one, of course, post-operative imaging to know, because I think imaging was also not detailed imaging was done, CE, CT now to see. The other, what Dr. Bhavna just mentioned, that we need to know tumor grade, depth of myometrial invasion, and based on these 2 reports only we can decide whether to do any adjuvant treatment, and if yes, then what kind of treatment. and a CECT to no nodal status. At least that much we need to know.
Yeah, because I think TCT immediately post-op also can be misleading at times. So
Yeah, but if we really don't know anything
Yes.
here, so if it's a deeply, your radiation field, if you see a para-aortic 2 centimeter node, because I think pre-surgery there wasn't any proper imaging.
yes.
So what will be your radiation field? And of course, grade and depth of myometrial infiltration will also, important in this case.
Madam, slide review, previous slide, please, madam.
Okay.
Previous one. Yes, thank you, madam. Slide review and immunohistochemistry was done in NICRH. Report shows squamous cell variant carcinoma of uterine cancer, moderately differentiated with metastasis to ovary. Her immunohistochemistry was done P63 positive and CEA negative. Here is our comment: squamous cell carcinoma of uterus moderately differentiated with metastasis to ovary.
With focal invasion, yes, with focal invasion to the uterine wall. Yeah, grade 2, moderately differentiated. And also the ovary show metastatic deposits of the squamous cell carcinoma.
What are the immunohistochemistry markers that needed for diagnosis of squamous cell carcinoma of uterus?
I think I would also do P16 in this case. In old women, if it is all endocervical growth, it can, endocervix can mimic endometrium. So I think P16, because primary uterine squamous carcinoma is extremely rare, it can happen. So we really need to rule out primary endocervical squamous carcinoma. So P16 is a good marker in this case.
Yes, but her endocervix was the chronic cervicitis. The cervix was not involved with the tumor.
No, so that maybe it was a flush cervix with pyometria in an old person. Dr. Giri, do you agree?
With pyometria, one should go for a P16 if there is a squamous cell carcinoma. At least because it is most for the lower end of the uterus is involved and might be cancer cervix, cervical squamous cell carcinoma is now repeated because it is because of blockage of the canal. There is a pyometria, and most probably P16 will give some guide whether it is a endocervical or endometrium.
Yeah, I think if it is P16 positive squamous cell carcinoma, then it will go in favor of primary cervix. If it is P16 positive adenocarcinoma, then one would think of in terms of uterine papillary serous carcinoma. But then other markers like P53 will be positive in that case. Here, of course, we have not done P53. So
yes, here P63 all are positive.
P53, I don't know, 63 is for which P50.
Uterine variant.
Yeah.
We do X-ray chest PU view, it report shows normal. CT scan of whole abdomen was done and it showed minimal ascites, suspected metastatic foci in right lobe of liver and lower rectus abdominis muscle. No lymphadenopathy was noted. And we advise for FNAC from hepatic space occupying lesion. And in the report showed positive for malignant cell, suggestive of metastatic carcinoma.
Oh.
It not known whether it's squamous cell carcinoma or adenocarcinoma.
Sir, it is only said metastatic carcinoma, not mentioned any other type.
Okay, but
Sir, now what would be her next treatment based on above findings?
It will be palliative chemotherapy again, plus minus Bev. We generally give a combination of paclitaxel carboplatin if her condition is, if she is physically fit to take this chemotherapy.
Would you like to add radiation to this patient for local control?
No, there is no radiation once the disease has metastasized so much. It's a widespread metastatic disease.
Yes.
Yeah, I think now radiation will be just palliative. So, if she gets bone mets, palliation of those, if she gets vaginal bleed because of recurrence, palliation of those, that symptom. But otherwise, I don't think we would give radiation for local disease.
We referred the patient to multidisciplinary tumor board, and she was advised for chemotherapy. Patient completed paclitaxel and carboplatin for 6 cycles up to February 2020. Then she was on regular follow-up, ultrasound of whole abdomen, liver function test, renal function test, X-ray chest, PA view was normal. At her 4th follow-up, she complained of body ache and pain at back, and she was advised for bone mineral density and bone scan. Her bone mineral density report shows osteoporosis in lumbar spine L3 and 4 in both femoral necks. And bone scan report shows hotspot seen in right femoral neck, L5 rounded ring-like isotope distribution is seen. Impression osteoblastic activity present. Now, how will you proceed with this patient?
So I think we need to be sure that osteoblastic activity, is it metastatic, or at times, osteoporotic reparative changes also may appear like that. So I think MRI is a better imaging in this case, and I don't know whether we would want to do a biopsy from bone, and we'll start her on zoledronic acid and calcium and other things.
Dr. Bhavna, would you like to add any other imaging, either MRI or PET-CT to these patients?
No, I think what Dr. Amita said is perfectly fine. We could do a PET-CT. I mean, either of the investigations, but the plan, yes. But even if, the PET could also light up otherwise also, there could be a false, lighting up of the PET also because of osteoporosis, osteoblastic lesions occasionally.
But why we do not do the PET-CT? Because there is the only lesion in the bone lesion. If there is any other area, if there is the isolated metastasis in bone, in that cases, she should get the palliative radiation in that bone. If there is no other metastatic disease in that cases, only this. And if there is disseminated disease, she again may get the.
If it's an isolated metastasis, it can be treated like an oligometastatic disease, and those, a radical intent of those can be delivered to the bone. This is unlike what we used to do previously. So this can be done, but first we will need to, prove it. The advantage of an MR is that we could even see if there is any associated soft tissue lesion there, which could further give us a clue whether it is metastatic lesion or osteoporosis.
We advise PET scan for this patient, and the reports is pending.
And
thank you for patient. Yes, madam.
Yeah.
I said the PET scan also provide additional information. If there are found to be any metastatic lesions elsewhere, then we could take this lesion as metastatic and then proceed with systemic treatment.
Yes. Thank you, madam.
Now I have another message from the previous case. The Dr. Shuman, who was the treating the doctor of this cancer cervix with liver metastasis patient, he just informed me that liver biopsy report showed the small cell carcinoma.
Yeah, I mean, that was like, if you see biologically, it's an aggressive tumor. So, you're,
So what to do right now? What the report I should consider? Is it adenocarcinoma or small cell, or I should offer for a second thought? Or if it is small cell, then what should be our treatment?
I think IHC confirmation is required to know, and we may give etoposide and cisplatin, but we need to see her, liver is really badly studied, whether she is going to take any toxic chemotherapy and how will be her outcome. So we also need to, look at her tolerance to chemotherapy.
Okay.
So yeah, etoposide and cisplatin would be a better regimen.
So,
If it's a
Amita, for me, if it is a small cell carcinoma, I will be tempted to more try with chemo, because we know even with etoposide carbo, we can try and there is a very good response. But say adeno, I think there is very less chance to try something, on that, because this is less responsive compared to small. Even the outcome is not that great, but there is a good chance of response when it's a small cell.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. So if it is small cell, etoposide cisplatin, if it is adeno, Paclitaxel carbo can be considered. I mean, that's how we would do it.
Madam, don't you think that the biological behavior is more likely related to small cell carcinoma? Because within the very short time, this type of metastasis, is it not correlated with the small cell type?
So the other possibility, if we are sure of adenocarcinoma, we have seen gastric type of adenocarcinoma. So those tumors, they behave very aggressive. They really have very poor outcome. Clear cell carcinoma also, some of them. So some HPV independent adenocarcinoma or a small cell carcinoma.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Normally, in a lot of centers, if there is a poorly differentiated carcinoma, further IHC is done to categorize the disease, because there could be overlap of histologies. There could be confusion on a simple histopathology. So IHC is usually done to differentiate what kind of malignancy it is. That holds true for endometrial carcinoma as well.
There are many questions in the chat box. The faculties are requested to answer the questions. Yeah. Now our third presenter is Dr. Saira Sharifa. Dr. Saira Sharifa, please present your case. Slideshow to them, slideshow.
Am I audible, madam?
Yes, you are.
Honorable Chairperson, respected faculties, learned audience, Assalamu alaikum, and very good evening. My patient, Mrs. X, 42 years, unmarried, diabetic, hypertensive lady, presented as a known case of carcinoma right breast, treated by right-sided mastectomy with axillary clearance on September 2018. Histopathology report revealed poorly differentiated infiltrating duct cell carcinoma. Immunohistochemistry report shows ER positive, progesterone and HER2 negative. She was treated by 6-cycle chemotherapy with paclitaxel and 25 fractions radiotherapy up to April 2019. One month after completion of radiotherapy, she complained right-sided bone pain on chest and advised for bone scan. Report shows metastasis on right fifth rib. On July 2019, she complains abdominal pain and swelling for 2 months. We examine her breast and axillary lymph node normal, a 10 into 8 centimeter mass in hypogastric and umbilical region, and bilateral inguinal lymphadenopathy. On parectal examination, mass fell through pouch of Douglas. We do some investigations. Ultrasonogram breast normal, ultrasonogram whole abdomen reveal a separated cyst about 11.3 into 9.3 centimeter in right ovary with a small solid area and bilateral inguinal lymphadenopathy. Her C125 was 185 unit per ml, and other tumor markers like CA15-3, CEA, and CA19-9 was within normal limit. MRI of whole abdomen revealed large right ovarian mass.
Your slide is not moving.
Ji madam?
Your slides are not moving.
আমার এখানে ম্যাডাম এখন কি মুভ হচ্ছে? এখানে তো মুভ দেখা যাচ্ছে।
ও
স্লাইড মুভ হচ্ছে না।
সুমিতা কি পাঠাইছিলেন আমাকে এটা? না কি নামে পাঠাইছে আমাকে?
আমি ডক্টর শিল্পী নামে পাঠাইছি। ম্যাডাম এখন কি মুভ হচ্ছে? আমার এখানে তো মুভিং দেখাচ্ছে। Post.
I think you can reshare, stop sharing and share again.
Yes.
ম্যাডাম এখন দেখা যাচ্ছে? Is the screen moving?
Yes, you can continue.
MRI whole abdomen reveal large right ovarian mass about 12 into 9 centimeter with both solid and cystic components and thin septation, and also bilateral inguinal lymphadenopathy. We advise her CT guided core biopsy and report revealed high grade serous carcinoma. Based on the above findings, now what will be her treatment?
Can you just summarize the patient? Summarize.
Summarize it.
A 42 years lady diagnosed as a case of breast carcinoma and treated by right-sided mastectomy with axillary clearance on September 2018. Her histopathology report was poorly differentiated infiltrating duct cell carcinoma. And then she received 6-cycle chemotherapy with paclitaxel and 25 fractions radiotherapy up to April 2019. And on May 2019, she developed chest pain and advice for bone scan. And bone scan shows right-sided fifth rib metastasis. And on July 2019, she complained blood abdominal pain and swelling, and we examined her and found a mass in lower abdomen, and C125 was 185 and other tumor marker was normal. And on MRI and ultrasonography report shows a mass in lower abdomen about 10 into 8 centimeter.
You didn't address the metastasis of the rib. The rib, when it was diagnosed rib metastasis, is there any workup not done, or some treatment was given to that patient?
No, she takes some analgesic for bone pain, and she and bone pain was relieved.
But
There was no other metastatic workup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, work was not there.
And her ear, probably her ear was positive,
positive.
PR, and her HER2 was negative, and she didn't receive any hormone therapy for that.
May 2019.
We found the patient. আমরা আমাদের কাছে কবে এসেছে?
July 2019, July. First of July.
Yes. She attended to our hospital in July 2019.
With complaints of abdominal pain and swelling.
So, what is the present status of the rib now?
No, so I think they're asking how will you
Last
manage this
Test
patient?
CT was done.
Don't-
Test CT was done, but
This you think she is with you today?
Yeah. Now
Yeah.
question comes whether it is the ovarian mass is a primary or metastatic
So the biopsy from the mass is high grade serous carcinoma.
carcinoma. Okay.
That's what she mentioned in
Uh-huh.
one of this. So I feel, clinical examination findings you did not mention, but what I would do, of course, in this case, one very important thing, we should get a genetic testing because she got breast cancer at very young age. She now developed second primary, if we believe in this ovary is second primary. So we need to do a genetic testing, at least BRCA1 and 2 testing, one. And the second, if this mass is operable, then I would go for surgery, with surgery of this mass plus bilateral inguinal nodes, which do not look very big on imaging. Of course, we have to do, before doing this, we need to really do some sort of, maybe in this case, a PET scan to know the status of that rib lesion and if there is any disease elsewhere. And also important to be sure that this is second primary serous carcinoma of ovary. So we can do some IHC markers, including P53 and GATA if available. And if it is proven second primary ovary, we can either do surgery upfront. It looks resectable. If not, then give chemotherapy, paclitaxel, carboplatin, although she has received that chemotherapy for her breast. That will be my plan.
But with this rib met, it's now stage 4 disease.
No, rib mets was before, and I think that
it is
Yeah.
from breast.
yeah. So we need to do before that imaging.
Yeah.
Maybe a PET CT is useful in this case to know if there are. And we are not sure whether that rib met was really met or something else, because without any treatment it disappeared. Also, we don't
Yes.
know what happened to that rib met.
Yes, we had only the papers, and not only that, it was an inoperable case. There was the metastatic deposits in the pulse of Douglas, and it was an inoperable case. And then, yeah.
So we will give her chemotherapy first, and paclitaxel, carboplatin, I guess 3 cycles, and then assess for surgery.
Next.
But again, important to be sure. And the other thing is, I'm surprised that she was not given anything for her hormonal treatment for her breast, although it
Yes.
was ER positive tumor.
Yes.
Then she received 6-cycle chemotherapy with paclitaxel and carboplatin up to December 2019. And on follow-up after completion of chemotherapy, a mass found in lower abdomen on pelvic examination, and it was separated from uterus and mobility was restricted. Ultrasonogram whole abdomen revealed a 15.6 into 9.7 into 13.7 centimeter thick walled multiloculated cyst with solid component and echogenic materials in right ovary. C125 was 211 unit per ml. We advise her PET CT to exclude metastasis in other site of body, and report revealed 12 into 11 centimeter large cystic separated mass on right side of pelvic region. No other visceral or nodal or osseous hypermetabolic lesions noted elsewhere in the body. She had family history of breast carcinoma. One of her paternal cousin died in breast cancer, and we advise her genetic testing. Report shows BRCA1 positive. Now, what will be her next treatment?
So I think she is surgery naive. We should offer her surgery. Do surgery with
But Amita, she was given 6 chemotherapy around 6 cycles or 3 cycles.
6 cycles.
Okay.
6 cycles. After chemotherapy, the disease has not responded. The tumor size is almost same. So again, surgery has to be done, but I don't know how it will be effective.
But
Ah.
6 cycle chemotherapy.
But she doesn't. Yeah, so it is large pelvic mass, and
Yes.
you
Mass,
know,
yeah.
so maybe worth.
on general examination, there is no
It
deposit
may
in
be
the
worth,
house.
but once he is not responding, this is a resistant to chemotherapy, and again, perhaps we should revise our diagnosis. Somewhere something has been. It might be low grade serous carcinoma, because if it is high grade, it should have responded to the paclitaxel. It has not responded after 6 cycles even. So I don't know whether with surgery again you have to give some chemotherapy. What chemotherapy has to be thought of, because mass is there and the aggressive mass is there, and I don't know whether it is a high grade tumor or not.
So I mean, yeah, you are right, but considering if BRCA mutant, generally they have high grade only.
That's true.
Right.
BRCA mutant is there, telling wild type is positive. I don't know.
No, she is a BRCA1 mutant.
Okay. Some surgery has to be done, but again, a resistant case.
Laparotomy followed by total abdominal hysterectomy and bilateral oophorectomy, omentectomy, and pelvic peritoneectomy done in our hospital on 25th January 2020. Findings was large, partly solid and partly cystic mass, about 13 into 12 centimeter in right ovary, capsule involved, and left ovary healthy. There was no ascites and multiple metastatic deposit in pelvic peritoneum. Histopathology report revealed papillary serous cyst adenocarcinoma high grade, omental and peritoneal metastasis. Now, what adjuvant therapy should be advised for her?
So
Seema is there. Dr. Seema is here. Dr. Seema. Oh. Okay, ma'am, please.
So was disease completely removed?
Yes.
Okay. So I think we would give her platinum based chemotherapy only, another maybe 2 or 3 cycles if there was completely removed disease. Disease was completely removed and there was no disease left behind. The other option, in addition to chemotherapy, we can consider her maintenance olaparib, which is very expensive. So I don't know whether she can afford olaparib or not, but we'll give maybe 2 or 3 more courses of platinum plus minus. If there is no neurotoxicity of paclitaxel, then we'll add taxane also.
Yes.
She was referred to tumor board and advised for 6 cycle chemotherapy with paclitaxel, carboplatin, and gemcitabine, and she has taken up to August 2020. And then she was on regular follow-up, and during follow-up on May 2021, we found a hard fixed mass about 3.3 centimeter on vault. CT scan whole abdomen revealed lobulated heterogeneous incisive soft tissue lesions in the pelvic cavity, about 4.3 into 3.3 centimeter. Cu-125 was 425 unit per ml. And CT chest revealed normal. Now, how will you proceed with this patient?
Sir, already. Is there any role of surgery here?
We like to go for PET CT now to rule out any spread of the disease anywhere. If it is a localized disease, yes.
Abdomen was done. CT chest and abdomen was done, sir.
The PET CT done, na?
Again, we go
So if the disease is limited to pelvis, perhaps we can go for the secondary cytosol. Can be done. What is your opinion, Amita?
So yeah, the only thing is I think she has, CA 125 is 420 something now.
425.
425, and she has a fixed mass at vaginal vault. So I'm not sure if we would do fixed mass surgery. Maybe we'll give her chemotherapy only, and of course olaparib, if there is platinum sensitive disease, olaparib again remains an option in this case.
She has received
The
12 cycles of chemotherapy.
she
First
has
chemotherapy,
received
12 cycles before surgery.
Yeah, so right. So we will maybe consider because her platinum free interval is more than 6 months, almost a year. We'll consider lipodox and platinum because she has received gemcitabine already.
But you just rule out surgery, because if in a fixed mass with this all imaging you can find out whether it's operable or not. And it is
We can see
it's a
at
big mass now. It most probably the mass is resistant to chemotherapy, and some focus which is resistant to chemotherapy has now grown up. Some focus was there, and we can think of doing surgery if possible. Of course, it can be
right. Right. So that assessment has to be done on clinical assessment examination. The only other, of course, once if you're not giving chemotherapy, then maybe if we think it's a localized disease, radiation also has some role to play. But before giving radiation, I think I would consider giving chemotherapy.
Next.
She attended multidisciplinary tumor board and they advised for chemotherapy.
Next.
Now, question comes: what chemotherapy are we going to give now? Lipidosa.
He was advised as oral etoposide. Oral etoposide for 14 days, 7 days off. Patient denied to take injectable chemotherapy.
Why are you here? Why? So planning purpose.
Dr. Bhavana can think of pelvic radiotherapy.
Dr. Bhavana left. She has another problem.
Okay. So, pelvic radiotherapy. What is your opinion of Amita?
So we have given, to few cases. The problem is once we give, we can give, but once we give radiation, for subsequent chemotherapy becomes very difficult. And when they recur after radiation, those recurrences are very difficult. And some cases like fixed pelvic masses, if they are abutting bowel or bladder, there is a risk of fistula formation. So in especially high grade serous, one has to be careful, but we have better experience with clear cell carcinoma and endometrial.
Mahfouz?
Ma'am.
Doctor, there is Seema Rani Devi. Please make her co-host. I don't know, is she Seema Gulia? Because I can't identify her.
Okay, done, ma'am.
Seema Rani Devi, is she Dr. Seema Gulia? I don't think so. Proceed for the next phase. Okay. Stop your slide share.
Thank you for patient hearing.
Yeah, our last presenter is Dr. Shushmita Sarkar.
My slides are visible?
Yes.
Make it size row.
Respected Chairperson, foreign faculties, my teachers and audience, good evening. She is 38 years, para 3 living 3, normotensive, non-diabetic. She underwent left-sided mastectomy due to ductal cell carcinoma of breast, followed by CCRT 5 years back. Then was she under regular follow-up and was taking tamoxifen for 3 years. She was amenorrheic for 1 year. She had no family or personal history of ovarian or colon cancer. On immunohistochemistry, she was ERPR positive but HER2 negative. So how should we follow up a patient when she's taking tamoxifen? Over to you, Giri sir.
So, what's her age? You're forgetting?
38 years.
38 years. So with ERPR positive, tamoxifen should be given, and it can be given up to 5 years. And during follow-up, if there is no symptom, there is no abnormal internal bleeding, or so there is no need of follow-up. But before going for the tamoxifen use, first we should evaluate the endometrium. Evaluate the endometrium to see if there is any abnormality there or not. After that, there is no need of follow-up in a perimenopausal lady, even on tamoxifen. So it may be because the endometrial thickness may be high and maybe more. So we cannot just on basis of endometrial thickness, we should not go for any intervention also. So there is no follow-up is not required, but the medical oncologist, they just go on doing the ultrasound, and on any thickened endometrium, they go ask for any interventions, but it's not required unless there is abnormal bleeding. What's your opinion, Amita?
Yeah, I absolutely agree that there is no need. Patients are just being informed if they experience any abnormal symptoms, which they should report immediately. If there is vaginal bleeding or discharge, otherwise a routine imaging or endometrial biopsy is not required. The reason why ultrasound is not very useful is tamoxifen causes submucosal stromal edema, and that gives a false appearance of thickened endometrium. So if you do ultrasound, it will show thick endometrium thickened, but actually that's because of subepithelial stromal edema, and because of very high false positive rate with ultrasound, it is not recommended to do ultrasound to monitor tamoxifen induced changes in the endometrium. And most endometrial pathologies are symptomatic, and they get symptoms early. So that's why we advise patients on tamoxifen to report early if they get any symptom. A routine screening is not useful.
So ma'am, is there any cutoff value of endometrial thickness in a 38 years woman?
On tamoxifen or without tamoxifen?
On tamoxifen.
So there is no real cutoff value. Some may say 12, 18, 20, but there is no cutoff value. And the other thing is we also need to see whether it's an endometrial polyp, because then radiologist should be able to differentiate between a polyp or thickened endometrium. Because if you see very thick endometrium, generally that's because of endometrial polyp, and which is also very common in tamoxifen users. But maybe some people say maybe 15 or 18 millimeter, that would be considered as a thickened endometrium in tamoxifen users premenopausal.
There is a dictum that in the 8 millimeter is taken at cutoff, but if there is no symptoms, perhaps the cutoff is not cut off. So if there is
Yeah.
no symptom,
And
so,
in premenopausal, I think 8 is little less,
little less.
maybe 12 or 15, but we generally don't use in our practice. We don't take any cutoff as
There is no
such.
cutoff in premenopausal already on tamoxifen.
There is no symptom, but endometrial thickness 20 millimeter. In that case,
Mostly we are dealing with polyp.
okay.
If there is no symptom, again there is most probably we should not intervene also.
So the bottom line is avoid ultrasound as far as possible,
Yeah.
because when you do, you get all these things. So, and then
Lot
there
of
is
controversy.
confusion. Yeah, and patients also, they become very anxious, if thickness is increased and if it increased in sequential ultrasound. So,
So what is the role of genetic testing, ma'am?
in
In a breast cancer patient. She's a breast cancer patient, breast cancer survivor.
okay. So if
5 years
there is no family history.
No, she has no positive family history.
Okay, so if it is, I think under 40 or TNBC under 35, if there are, I think microcalcification, extensive DCIS, all those are indications for genetic testing. How old is she?
38 years.
Yeah, so.
Then she developed irregular spotting. On examination, her vitals were within normal limit, abdominally no palpable mass. On pelvic examination, uterus was bulky and a freely mobile mass fell through left lateral fornix. On transvaginal ultrasound, endometrial thickness was 14 millimeter and left adnexal multisector cyst 4.2 into 2.3 centimeter. Tumor markers C125 and C15.3 was within normal limit. Endometrial fractional curettage revealed simple endometrial hyperplasia. BRCA was advised, but patient denied due to financial constraint. Then she was advised for follow-up visit. On her follow-up visit, uterus was 16 week size and adnexal mass 18 to 8 centimeter fell through left fornix. Transvaginal ultrasound on 25th May revealed endometrial thickness reached up to 20 millimeter and the left adnexal mass has increased 7.3 into 6.7 centimeter. Her tumor markers are within normal limit. Considering the increased size of the increased thickness of the endometrium, we have repeated the endometrial curettage and it reveals simple endometrial hyperplasia. So, simple endometrial hyperplasia on 2 uterine curettage and an increasing size adnexal mass with normal tumor marker. What would be her management? Amita ma'am.
So I think we have done just blind curettage. We have not done hysteroscopy.
Yes.
So every, if possible, all tamoxifen users, we must do hysteroscopy. Polyps are missed on blind curettage. That's one thing. And second, we also need to remember that tamoxifen can cause simple cyst formation in the ovary because it, it's one of ovulation induction drugs. So that's another possibility. Sorry?
The cyst was multisected.
Yeah, so that's what I want to see, whether these are multiple cysts.
No.
Or there was one cyst with some multiple septi.
One cyst with multiple septi.
Okay. We need to be sure, because to me it was looking more like a multiple ovarian, multiple cyst, functional cyst kind of thing that can happen in tamoxifen users. So I would still consider a possibility of a benign etiology. To me, all both looks benign. So at this point, how many years of tamoxifen?
3 years.
Only 3 years. Okay.
But within 6 months, the size of the
What is the color Doppler study of this mass?
Doctor was not done, sir.
So when there is a mass in the pelvis, so it is limited to pelvis, perhaps it should go to the aorta, because even if it is ovarian, it is just with ovarian mass. So we should rule out whether it is a primary ovarian and whether it is a benign or malignant. So aorta can give a little bit more diagnosis towards whether you are dealing with benign or malignant. Here the scoring can give you whether B or N. This is a small thing, but it gives a lot of information.
Sir,
In this process,
she
yes.
is poor patient, hailing from poor socioeconomic condition, and
color Doppler study.
No, sir.
When you are able to do CT scan, all these things, perhaps it is only TV scan. TV scan with the color Doppler study does not take much time, much money also. So we can get into more information. Yes, if it's color Doppler study, so RIPI, etc. is less. Perhaps we can think of, yes, we are dealing with either malignant or benign disease, or we are dealing with, as Amita madam told, that is tamoxifen induced. It might be hyperstimulation syndrome. Might.
It's a tumor markers were within normal limit.
A tumor marker, and she is a poor socioeconomic condition patient. She has already breast cancer. She received chemotherapy, radiation, everything. Now she's on follow-up on tamoxifen. She repeatedly coming, and her tumor size is increasing. Within 6 months, it is 7.5.
Only thing, before going for anything, you should know whether you are dealing with benign or malignant.
Yes, okay, sir.
Right. So you planned her for surgery?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see what was done. Okay.
Sir, ma'am, laboratory with frozen biopsy was our plan.
Okay.
So she underwent laparoscopy on 19th June. Frozen section biopsy of the left adnexal mass was negative for malignancy.
Okay.
So, ma'am, simple endometrial hyperplasia, left adnexal mass is negative for malignancy. Patient is a breast cancer survivor. She is very anxious of a treatment. So, what type of surgery it should be?
So now, since we have taken her up for surgery, I would, in this situation, I would now complete surgery. I would, considering her background and everything, I would do bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy and hysterectomy. And that will also have positive effect on her breast disease. And then if we can put her on letrozole after surgery. Or we can continue tamoxifen either ways. But at this point, I will do bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy and hysterectomy since we have taken her up for surgery.
So, Giri sir?
Yes. Once a plan for surgery, but without knowing whether you are dealing with benign or malignant, it's all right. You have done procedures. It comes out to benign. The treatment choice would be BSO and TH. So now the problem is if you have a little bit of suspicion about malignancy or not, the incision is something different. But here incision will be small transplant, the financial incision will be there. This is the difference. This is the idea of doing the color Doppler study. So otherwise we can do surgery, and the surgery treatment choice here is the BSO and TH.
So, corroborative finding was uterus was 14 weeks size, a broad-based polypoid mass was present in the endometrial cavity near the fundus. Total abdominal hysterectomy with bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy was done. Histopathology report revealed endometrial polyp.
So who
and there was no malignancy in the left and right body.
As I was telling, we could have done the histoscopy. So histoscopy could have detected the endometrial polyp earlier. Anyhow, the treatment is done. The correct treatment is done.
Thanks all for patience hearing.
Thank you. So I think what message from this case is, one, we have to keep endometrial polyp especially in tamoxifen users, and only blind endometrial curettage is not good. We need to have a hysteroscopic picture also of the endometrial cavity. And second, tamoxifen also has, this ovulation induction kind effect on ovaries. So not all ovarian masses in tamoxifen users are suspicious. So we have to be, we need to carefully evaluate, do careful examination, ultrasonography or MRI if possible. And in rare case, what we do, if such a case, we may temporarily stop tamoxifen, put them on GnRH and give letrozole. So GnRH will cause medical castration and we give them letrozole. So that's alternative to surgery. But in this case, anyway, endometrium was also a concern. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you all for your this time. We have the all these cases today, all are discussed. Now we have the 4 questions and there is some questions in the, have you answered all the questions? I don't know.
So interesting cases with good learning message in each case and unusual.
And well worked up. It's a well worked up. Very good.
I am very much, I am impressed today as there is another program overlapping and I have to, many people called me for that, for arranging this program. I'm so sorry. Okay. Thank you. Now show the 4 questions again, Mahfuz. Thanks. All our faculties, probably Dr. Sima, she again missed today and she promised that I didn't attend because she has another problem, and for that reason she promised that I will surely join in next program. I don't know how many times she will tell this. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Now this is the end of our program. Thank you very much. Thank you all our faculties for your continued support to us. And for the today was our GTD session for some other problem, and due to the overlapping of the SAPO program, we just changed this today's program to the next week, and all the participants are requested to attend this the GTD session because still we don't want to let them die the GTD patients. So how can we proceed and how can we manage our patients? So all the participants are requested to attend in the GTD session, and all the faculties today, you are also requested to attend in our that sessions. Now I request our scientific secretary, Dr. A.F.M. Kamaluddin, for vote of thanks of this today's session. Kamal bhai, please.
Thank you, Shahana. It was really an interesting session. I mean, as Amita was telling, all the cases were so interesting. And now I think this session became a den of interesting cases. So we are really enjoying listening to things, and every day we are learning so many things. Thanks to you and your team for bringing up nice cases, and thanks to all the foreign faculties for giving us so much input, and we learned a lot. Thanks to Amita, Dr. Giri, and Bhavna. And finally, I would like to request all our participants, even there was an overlap with another program. At one stage, I saw the participation was 120. So this is the spirit of our initiative, and I'm sure, inshallah, we will continue it. And as Shahana said, next week we have a great session on GTT. Hopefully everybody will enjoy. And if we are getting this type of support, Oncology Club is determined to continue this program. And under the leadership of our President and Secretary, we are optimistic that this will continue and it will be beneficial to all of us. Again, I want to thank the team of Shahana and all the faculties. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kamal Bhai. Now I request our chairperson, Professor M.A. Hai sir, to conclude the session. Sir, please. Sir, please. Mahfuz sir, nine.
আছে ম্যাম, আছে স্যার।
Please show the poll winners, the name of the poll winners. Sir, nine to. Sir, nine to. Abiha. Islam Bithi. Kamal Bhai, sir, nine.
Can I stop sharing?
Yes, yes. Probably sir clip. Yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you all the participants, our faculties, they have given us the continued support, and all our senior, the teachers, Dr. Kudrati Ilahi, Dr. Parveen Akhtar Banu Madam, and all other, the senior, the teachers. I cannot recognize all them in this short period of time and the busy program. So I am very much grateful to all you all and want your continued support. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.